How's it going, Eliminators? Today we're going to be looking at a plasma cutter that we just got from Lockade Equipment Rentals right here in Port Colborne, Ontario. So as the company grows, we go out and buy ourselves tools or pieces of equipment that we need to make our work here at Eliminator Performance easier. And we're starting to work on more and more mower decks for riding lawnmowers, and it's easier to cut the rusted parts out when you got a plasma cutter. So we went out and bought a brand new one. So this is a Hypertherm Powermax 30 XP. You guys can see it there. I'm going to do a full unboxing. Yeah, we picked this thing up. It was about 1,400 bucks. So let's have a good look at her. So when you first open this up, you got all of your manuals here, accessory lists, safety and compliance manual, just your basic paperwork. Now it's time for the good stuff. Extendable cables. This is for running, I believe, 220 to 110, some kind of adapter. We'll get all this pulled out of here. And this is what you get for about 1,400 bucks. Doesn't look like much, but this thing's super small, super light too, and yeah, I'm pretty impressed with how small this thing is. I'll show you guys all the stuff we get with it. So as far as the adapter here, we have a 220, but it's the one with the plug that runs this way. So this one runs up and down, then this one runs left and right. So we can't use this one, but what we can use is this to the 110. So we'll just run this thing off a 110. But they said if you want to cut thicker steel, you should run it off at 220 and it'll cut thicker steel no problem. We also get a starter kit here. So it's got all your tips, and these are called consumables. So these burn out over time and you got to replace them. So the way a plasma cutter works is pretty simple. You plug this end into your outlet, so you supply power to this thing. Then you take your air line from your compressor and you plug it in right onto that there. So it uses electricity to superheat the metal until basically it's red hot and just about molten, and then the compressed air forces that through and gives you a nice clean cut. You also have a wide range of amps that you could run this thing on, so anywhere from 15 to 30 amps. And because we're going to be taking this engine off of this machine, but leaving the crankshaft and the stack pulley onto the engine there, we need a place to put the engine. So we marked out a hole on this table that I built back when I was in high school, and we're just going to be cutting a hole into it with our new plasma cutter. It's a Hypertherm Powermax 30 XP. We picked this thing up just recently from Lockade Equipment. Now, depending on the amperage of your outlet, you're going to have to run it at a different color here. So you guys can see there's gray, then there's blue, and then I guess there's white that goes all the way around. So basically this is 15 amp down here, this is 20 amp, that's 25, and then that's like max power. We don't need that. We're going to be running it right there, which is 20 amps, and that should be good enough to cut through this steel. You guys are also going to want to use a pair of shaded lenses as well. Okay, so I just did a tiny little pass before I set up the camera because I wanted to make sure that my amperage setting was good. So it was a little bit shaky, not that straight of a cut, but this thing cuts like butter, and it doesn't even produce a lot of sparks. If you pull too fast, you start getting sparks that start bouncing up off the surface towards you, and that's a good indicator just to slow your cutting speed down a bit, and then you'll see the sparks shoot through to the bottom. But yeah, guys, this thing cuts awesome. Pull the trigger and your air will start. And once you're done cutting, this air will continue to flow until the tip is cooled. But for right now, we're going to start our cut. I think we tripped a breaker. Okay, so we got our hole cut. I went a little bit outside the line on that side, but that shouldn't be that bad. So I'm going to get a hammer and hammer that out, but this thing works awesome. We've ran into a little issue though. We tripped a breaker, and that's because this outlet here outside runs off of the same breaker that our compressor runs off of, and we obviously need that to run the plasma cutter because you know, the electricity heats up the steel and then the compressed air forces that through, and that's basically how a plasma cutter works. So we'll probably end up using our 220 here because that runs off a separate breaker, and we shouldn't have any issues. Okay, so let's have a look at this cut. So I haven't used a plasma cutter in about 10 years, but you know, this cut was pretty good. So let's look at how you can tell whether or not you're going too fast or too slow. So you guys see here we're getting a little bit of slag, so that means I was going a little too slow. So the metal on the bottom side of this cut was getting superheated, right? And that's called slag. So you guys can see there's a little buildup on the bottom lip of that edge. Okay, now if we come over here, you guys can see it's starting to get a little jagged. That's where I was starting to go a little too fast. So stuff was starting to spit out the top because the cut wasn't going through because I was moving at too fast of a speed. So you guys can see, you know, the cut here gets a little jagged. Just play around with it, guys, and you know, you'll get the hang of it, what you know, movement speed to run and what amperage to be running at. But yeah, couldn't be happier with this thing. So now I'll probably just take the grinder to this just to clean it up a little bit, and we'll end up maybe drilling some holes so that we can bolt an engine to this at a later date. If we ever want to fire one up off of the you know, the machine, then we'd be able to do that. So this is what we got now. Basically, if we ever have an engine that's you know, got a shaft coming out the bottom of it, we can put it right here on our little table here and make an impromptu engine stand. We had to put the 2x4s on just because of the oil drain on this one. Comes out at 90 degrees, and it's actually lower than the base of this engine. But if we have a look here, we can see that, you know, the shaft and the stack pulley on the bottom goes underneath our table, and yeah, it's a perfect fit. So like I said, you know, this is good just to, if we ever have to pull off an engine, we can put it here out of the way. So if you guys enjoyed the video, think about leaving us a thumbs up. You can click over there on the right to subscribe. And if you want to check out one of my previous videos, click over here on the left. I upload weekly, so be sure to come on back next week and check out what we got new on the channel. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.